Okay, well, good morning, everyone. So our opening hymn will be "We Laugh, We Cry." For those in the sanctuary, please sit back and enjoy the hymn, but please do not sing along. We do enjoy your voices, but you know why we can't have you sing along. We laugh, we cry.
We laugh, we cry, we live, we die, we dance, we sing our song. We need to feel there's something here to which we can belong. We need to feel the freedom just to have some time alone. But most of all, we need close friends we can call our very own. And we believe in life and in the strength of love. And we have found our need to be together. We have our hearts to give, we have our thoughts to receive, and we believe that sharing is an answer. A child is born among us, and we feel a special glow. We
Join the meeting.
time's endless journey as we watch the baby grow. We thrill to hear imagination freely running wild, but dedicate our minds and hearts to the spirit of this child. And we believe in life and in the strength of love, and we have found our time to be together. And with the grace of age, we share the wonder of youth, and we believe that growing is an answer. Our lives are full of wonder, and our time is very brief. The death of one among us fills us all with pain and grief. But as we live, so shall we die, and when our lives are done, the memories we shared with friends, they will linger on, and we believe in life and in the strength of love, and we have found a place to be together. We have the right to grow, we have the gift to believe that peace within a living is an answer. We seek elusive answers to the questions of this life. We seek to put an end to all the waste of human strife. We search for truth, equality, and blessed peace of mind. And then we come together here to make sense of what we find. And we believe in life and in the strength of love. And we have found our joy being together. And in our search for peace, maybe we'll finally see, even to question truly is an answer.
Good morning. Welcome to the live in-person and live Zoom worship service of the Unitarian Universalist Church of Riverside. Thank you for joining us here in person, and thank you for joining us remotely by Zoom, where we'll continue live streaming and posting these services on our YouTube channel for our virtual attendees. I'm Steve Fuji, a member of the Worship Committee and of the Board of Trustees, and I'll be your worship associate today, and the first Sunday of every month, so hope you don't get tired of seeing me up here. We welcome you to join us this first Sunday morning of 2022 with an open mind and an open heart, and with muted electronic devices, please, which I needed to remind myself of. We invite you to leave your worries and defenses at the door and trust that what happens in worship is inspiring and powerful. Together, we affirm that this day and our being together can make each of us braver, more compassionate, and wiser as we begin a new day, a new week, and a new year. Although our doors are open, the pandemic is not over. So while we're here, please keep your mask on and socially distance. We can speak in normal tones, but singing or chanting creates an increased risk of airborne exposure, so we ask you to refrain for the time being. We invite those of you in the sanctuary to sit back and enjoy listening and sing along in your minds. For those of you at home, sing your hearts out. And now I invite you to sit back and take a slow, deep breath as we move into our worship hour. Please join me in reading the UU Covenant. Love is the spirit of the church, and service its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. Our speaker today is UUCR member Lee Greer. Lee is an evolutionary biologist, a published scientist and educator, and married to Linda and father of 3. Lee and Linda have been members of the UU Church of Riverside for years. The sermon is Community and the War Against Modern Loneliness. In the modern world, isolation leading to loneliness is a major part of the human experience, and even more so in our post-industrial pandemic situation. In today's meditation, we'll consider the experience of loneliness from isolation in an artificial world in sharp contrast with the natural healing experience of solitude in nature. Friendship and community have a different meaning between the alien artificial world and our home, nature. We have 2 lightings of the sacred flames. The first is the occupied indigenous people's remembrance candle. The second is the lighting of our own chalice, the symbol of our faith. We walk upon the traditional territories of diverse and sovereign peoples, the original peoples of this land, who continue to cry out for justice and self-determination. The spot we occupy was the sacred space of several groups of indigenous peoples, including the Cahuilla, the Cupeño, and the Serrano. And we, the Universalist Unitarian Church of Riverside, light the sacred flame as the stewards of this sacred and holy place. We are blessed with a space and opportunity to strive to live out our common principles, to bring justice, equity, and compassion into our daily lives, to resist all that threatens the earth and her people, and to be part of a world community with peace, liberty, and justice for all. Let these thoughts carry us forth as we journey and worship together. Thank you, Bill. Today's reading of the chalice lighting is Bold and Courageous Together by Erica A. Hewitt. The word courage comes from the Latin cor, which means heart. According to poet Mark Napo, the original use of the word courage meant to stand by one's core, a striking concept that reinforces the belief found in almost all traditions that living from the center is what enables us to face whatever life has to offer. To encourage means to hearten, to impart strength and confidence. This is our work as a religious community, to encourage one another, to be bold in engaging the world around us, as well as what scares us internally, to give one another the confidence and heart to live as fully as possible. With full hearts, we affirm our relationships with one another, we recognize our agency and our connective power, and we accept our responsibility to be bold and courageous. We light this chalice, symbol of all that we are, all that we have done together, and all that we will be, as our shared ministry encourages those within and beyond our walls. We have a tradition at UUCR to welcome those who are visitors or perhaps returning after some time away. We know it can be uncomfortable to stand up and speak in front of others, and so I will now ask for a volunteer from someone who has been here a while to tell us your name and how you found out about the church. Please come to the mic in front of the pulpit and speak into it directly and clearly so everyone can hear. Do we do that, or do we take the microphone to them? All right, let's have John Fisher come up. No? All right, Bill Rowe?
My name is Bill Rowe. We started at the Unitarian Church in Long Beach. We moved up here in 2004. Was sitting around the sun deck talking to some other people and found out that 2 of us were Unitarians. And so I said, where's the Unitarian Church? And he says, the closest one's in Riverside, right next to the library. And that's how we found this church. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. So see, that's how it's done, and it's really easy. If you're new here, a visitor, or an old friend, please raise your hand to stand up and come to the mic in front. Please let us know who you are, where you're from, and how you found out about us. Anyone here? Well, I see mostly familiar faces here today. Okay. Well, if there's someone online who would like to introduce themselves, please raise your hand and we will call on you. No? All right. For new guests, our visitors book is in the Parish Hall. Please leave your name before you leave so we know you're here, and contact information if you want to know about upcoming events. For those of you online, the best way to get added to the mailing list is to email our church office at admin@uuchurchofriverside.org. There are a few announcements we'd like to share. During the service, we'll mention several websites, email addresses, and phone numbers. At the end of the service, we will leave a slide with all this information, and it is available on our website. The monthly UUCR newsletter comes out the first of every other month by email and per request by postal mail. If you have something newsworthy or that you would like to contribute, email uuchurchofriverside.calendar@gmail.com or call the church office at 951-686-6515. If you would like to be added to our mailing list, please also contact the church office. Due to a recent increase in cases, the California Department of Public Health has mandated that everyone in California wear a mask in indoor public spaces and workplaces. In these uncertain times, the safety of our members and visitors are a top priority at UUCR. We respectfully ask that everyone wear a mask and socially distance indoors as required. To that end, we ask you to take your coffee outside the church after the service so that there's no risk of removing your mask while socializing in the parish hall. Thank you for your cooperation. So an event that's upcoming is Lunarfest, January 29th to 30th. We're planning to have a book sale during the Lunarfest, so please bring books you no longer want taking up space for us to sell. Please see Kate if you have time to help sort through books or to be available to help at the sale. The Concerned Users of Riverside, also known as CURE, the community outreach arm of the Social and Environmental Justice Committee, will be meeting in the Social Justice Room on the second floor of the annex at 12 noon today. You can find more information on the website under Social and Environmental Justice. So we have joys and concerns now. It is said that shared joy is double joy, shared sorrow is half sorrow. On the first Sunday of each month, we share the joys and concerns that we have received from you and which you have collected throughout the month. First, I'm going to read joys and concerns that were given to us. Kate is thankful for the weekly dinners with her daughter and son-in-law, especially during this time of limited contact with others, and joy for the family of cats who have turned her yard into a jungle gym. Grace is thankful for the view of snowy mountains, the rain that nourishes the earth, and the brilliant mornings that come after the storm. If there's anyone in the sanctuary who would like to speak their joy and concern, please raise your hand, and Bill Casey will come around to the mic. Oh, or come up here. Okay. Oh, okay.
Well, I keep speaking for the first responders because we keep living in a world where things get jacked up. We've got not far from where I grew up, the wildfires in Colorado hit, and they've hit hard. Hundreds of homes destroyed. That's always rough on anyone. And so again, I pray to the first responders that they can keep their heart and head and their game around them. I don't know how they do it, but I'm so glad they're there. Whether you're facing flood, collapsed buildings, or just a pile of cinders and a bunch of distraught people, it's good that there's somebody who does the patchwork. If the world had stopped kicking us in the head, maybe we could relax a little, but hey, it doesn't seem to be in the game plan. My joy is that I belong to a population that keeps producing them. And as hard as the world is, we got people with open hearts who will answer the call. And I'm happy as far as stronger contact with my family than I used to have. So, you know, on the micro level, things are looking all right.
Thank you, Bill. I'd also like to express a personal joy and gratitude for good health and the fact that I'm continuing to enjoy a lot of my hobbies and interests in spite of financial challenges I'm dealing with right now. So I do have great gratitude for that. We place a stone on our water chalice to represent the joys and concerns. Oh, sure. I'm sorry.
Hi. I have both a joy that I'd like to start with and a concern that I'll end with. But first, I have a joy that I got to see my family back in Illinois. I got to see my mom and dad and my sister, whom I have not gotten to see in person for quite a while now. And I also got to spend a good amount of time with Margaret's family, which I really had a really great time with them as well. And so I really enjoyed being able to get closer with them despite everything. But in a similar vein, my concern is that because everyone was seeing each other's families, suddenly pretty much everyone I knew was suddenly 0 or 1 degree separated from COVID, including myself. I took a COVID test after coming in contact with someone who tested positive. And so it seems like it's really, this new variant is pretty virulent. And so my concern is that it's pretty bad all around, and we all know the story there, so I won't say more.
Thank you. Anyone else? Oh, Lee.
Yeah, I'm happy and sharing a joy that my kids were home. My older kids were home for the first time with their significant others in a couple of years. And last year they were kind of more scattered around the world a little bit, and it was good to have them home. I'm also thankful that we survived the year without any major new wars. So that was not, now we just get the old ones ended, then that would be great as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
Yeah, I'd like to share a concern. Well, Kay Mowry shared how much she enjoyed the company that she had, which was wonderful, and I was very happy to see her over this period of time. But I just learned that very recently she had a fall and broke her left arm. And so now she's kind of one-handed for a while and trying to make do with that. So I just want to send healing thoughts her way and to pass that word along.
Thank you. Adam.
We just lost Betty White recently. So I want to share a joy that the Golden Girls are enjoying a cheesecake together again. And in honor of that, I did bring some cheesecake. So as you leave, make sure you grab a slice of cheesecake.
Thank you. We've actually lost quite a few celebrities this past year, but Betty White was really special. Okay, anyone else? We place a stone on our water chalice to represent the joys and concerns we have shared with our church community and a recognition of those we hold close and have not shared. Thank you. May we remember those who have spoken, those they have named, and those we hold silence in our heart. Our next hymn is Wowaya. I hope that's the correct way to pronounce it. If you're in the sanctuary, I invite you to sit back, close your eyes, and listen and sing along in your hearts and minds.
We are going, heaven knows where we are going, but we know within. We are going, heaven knows where we are going, but we know within. We will get there, heaven knows how we will get there, but we know we will. It will be hard, we know, and the road will be muddy and rough, but we'll get there. Heaven knows how we will get there, but we know we will. Woya-ya, 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 woya-ya. We are going, heaven knows where we are going, but we know within. We will get there, heaven knows how we will get there, but we know we will. It will be hard, we know, and the road will be muddy and rough, but we'll get there. Heaven knows how we will get there, but we know we will. Woya-ya, 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 woya-ya,
Do you know what language the word wayaya is from? Oh, okay, great. It's great that we have these words from different cultures and traditions that we honor here at this church. So now, sharing our treasure, this portion of the service is to support our beloved historical church, which really is a beautiful church, and this can be accomplished in several ways. In addition to the weekly collection, you may send your checks to the church address, which is shown here. Yes, it is. You may contribute by PayPal using the QR code, which is on the church website and also in the newsletter. Stater Brothers Market gives our church a rebate on Stater grocery cards, which we will have in the church each Sunday. You get the full value, and the church also receives a percentage. Amazon cards are also available. Please donate as the Spirit moves you by whatever method works best for you. Thank you for your generosity. And to those who give of their time and talent, thank you for your generous care and attention. Will our ushers now please come forward to receive the collection? Thank you. I was a college music major and I never knew that Finlandia was written as recently as 1957. That piece is newer than I am. Okay. Our next hymn is From You I Receive. Please sit back quietly and enjoy.
From you I receive, to you I give. Together we share, from this we live.
From you I receive, to you I give. Together we share, from this we live. From you I receive, to you I give. Together we share, and from this we live.
Well, you already saw a little preview of the slide that tells you our meditation today is All That We Share is Sacred by Andre Moll. As we gather together, may we remember, when you share with me what is most important to you, that is where listening begins. When I show you that I hear you, when I say your life matters, that is where compassion begins. When I open the door to greet you, that is where hospitality begins. When I venture out to bring you to shelter, that is where love begins. When I risk my comfort to ease your suffering, when I act against hatred, violence, and injustice, that is where courage begins. When we experience the full presence of each other because of our shared humanity, because of our differences, that is where holy gratitude begins. May this space be a table that is not complete until all are welcome. May this table be a space of beauty where together we create a series of miracles and where all that we share is sacred. May it be so. Now let us pause for a moment of silence. Now I'd like to introduce one of my favorite people in the world, Lee Greer, speaking to us on community and the war against modern loneliness. Lee?
Thank you, Steve, and everyone, and Happy New Year. I want to make sure that everyone can hear okay. All right. Share a slide here. That's home. And this image was domesticated by NASA. It was taken in December of 1968, and it was domesticated by NASA by putting the moon surface as if it were the ground underneath the foot, and the Earth rising above it. It was called Earthrise. But this was actually more what Bill Anders saw was a disoriented way of looking at it when he looked out of the command module capsule in the Apollo space program. And he said that when he saw that image, his worldview was shattered. He had been a conservative Catholic and a military man much of his life, but he said, my worldview was shattered when I saw how small and distant and fragile Earth was there. And as we discuss the issue of community and the war against modern loneliness, we want to view it from perspective of the large and the small within ourselves and then our connections with others. This was introduced earlier by a little meditation that I had composed earlier about this, contrasting two different kinds of loneliness. There is the loneliness when you are in the crowd and in the concrete jungle and in the modern hustle and bustle. And then there is what has been called by a naturalist of the last century being alone and in solitude in the natural world. Alone being a compound of two words, all one. And of course, what everyone, being social primates as we are, everyone seeks for community and love and connection, continuously seeking. And when we misdirect that search, all kinds of maladaptive and pathological behaviors can emerge from the wrong ways of seeking community, from addictions, from desperation, and despair. Because we have the ideals that we carry around in our hearts and minds, those that are dear to us, connections, those that we have lost, perhaps, and the feelings that go all the way up and down in these connections. Sometimes you can be with the people that you love and you can still be alone, right? Because you may have variance and annoyance and anger in one's heart against people that are even the closest to you. Sometimes people that are the closest to you have the way of getting on your last nerve, right? Have you ever noticed that? Okay, and yet they are the dearest to you, okay? And so we have to understand our own internal situation as we examine the issue of modern loneliness. So a relationship with ourselves is where we must begin. It's a personal ecology that we must cultivate, which means the environment and the interaction between the organism and the environment within our own selves, recognizing that we are ephemeral creatures. We're not here forever, and we're part of a larger stream. One of the 7 principles of Unitarian Universalism focuses on community, and of course that's what we're dealing with here when we're talking about this, but it begins with the community within ourselves, that personal ecology. And then we're going to have to take a moment to look at the natural world and what has happened to our natural world under the influence of an ideology which we will name, happily, okay, the ideology of modern capitalism, which has only been around for about 300 or 400 years, but yet has been the most destructive ideology in the history of humankind. We have, in fact, of course, lived as anatomically modern Homo sapiens for about 315,000 years without this ideology. And yet this ideology of phantom ownership and infinite resources, because it is a phantom and a fictional ideology and a fantasy, leads to a kind of madness which has affected all of our souls in many different ways, through consumerism, conflict, destruction of the natural habitat, and our homes, where we have lived actually quite in harmony. Our species has lived in harmony most of our existence as anatomically modern Homo sapiens and as archaic Homo sapiens much longer. And members of the genus Homo, going back over 2 million years, have lived in harmony as one of the top predators. Okay? And we forget in our modern age that a predator is a positive part of an ecosystem. We take and we apply the word predator to pathological behavior among humans, but we should use the word parasite there, not predator. Predator is what keeps an ecosystem healthy if it is not, and the numbers in balance. Of course, that is what we are not doing right now. We have been engaging, and when I say we, I don't mean the human race. I mean we as modern humans infected by the virus of the ideology that I just named, international or global capitalism. And extinction is a result. But you know, the earth is resilient. Civilizations pass, the planet remains. Life has survived many extinction events before. One that was at the end of the Permian about 250 million years ago was far more drastic than the one that we're undergoing now. And life, what happens when old ecosystems and habitats pass through traumatic events is new ones are born, and biodiversity fills the space that comes afterwards. So I want you to do your first meditation right now, and this will be, I suppose we can say, a guided meditation. There's no need to have your eyes open or closed. I do want to let this image evoke something within you. Imagine that you were by yourself in this very drab, gray, dark, and cold cell in this dungeon. This happens to be from Alcatraz, by the way. Okay. And you were sitting in there day in and day out, sitting there completely by yourself, no human contact. Okay. That would be an example of what we call modern loneliness, the concrete jungle, if you will. Where we are cut off from our natural world. The experiments which have been done on rats, which are actually which I'll show you in a little bit, of the major groups of animals are about approximately our 17 millionth cousin, which means they're more closely related than our cats and dogs to us, okay, evolutionarily speaking, is that in crowded and conditions with scarcity and with severe competition, atomistic types of relationships and lack of relationships, rats became aggressive, showed higher levels of cortisol and stress, and began attacking each other. We see a lot of this in modern human society today. We see forms of tribalism, which are not natural tribes, you know, the kind that would scarcely see each other and would be in different places, sharing a landscape, being part of the ecosystem, but in fact, becoming vicious with each other by word, by deed, or shrinking into own little protective cocoons of trauma, which again is overstimulation of our fight and flight responses, raising of cortisol levels, and all the chronic disease which comes from that. Our second meditation, which we will start now, is I want you to think of what it is to be in a wide open space. Even if you are by yourself, remember we have to establish, in order to get rid of modern loneliness and understand the joy of actual natural solitude, We have to make peace with ourselves first before we can make peace with our fellow creatures. And this image of a human sitting at the end of a jetty over an open reflection of a lake and everything, and you can put any natural sight that you wish, you begin to recognize that actually loneliness and solitude are two different things. Solitude is actually what we need in order to be healthy in a community with each other. We need to have our internal space. We need to have our natural space and the spaciousness of our minds. So as you draw in breaths of oxygen, which have been bequeathed to us by arrivals from outer space 3.5 billion years ago, the cyanobacterial that gave us our atmosphere. Chemically, our Earth used to have a reducing atmosphere, not an oxidizing atmosphere. And almost all of the 21% of oxygen in our atmosphere is biogenic. It's produced by living things, namely of the cyanobacteria and their descendants, which are the chloroplasts in our plants. And of course, cyanobacteria are still around. And spectral evidence shows that far out in nebula and even in distant galaxies of particles and emission and absorption lines, which are very similar to anthracite, coal, and bacteria here, are ubiquitous out there. That's controversial scientific evidence, which means that those who are in the staid and cramped halls of academia, which I've spent a lot of time in, very often scientific progress goes slower because funerals of great eminent professors don't happen fast enough. Sorry, my fellow academics. Okay. We are in fact part of an interdependent web of life, which is not a metaphor. That's an act. We are actually evolutionarily by DNA molecules, which is the only real time machine, okay, other than telescopes. All right, but which we have within us, okay, is our actual physical connection with all of the living things on planet Earth. Okay, we are genetically related to every living thing on Earth, and you have within you genes which are older than the Rocky Mountains and the Himalayas and the Appalachians and the Arbuckles, and you can go back to more ancient landforms, basically any of the modern continents. Can't use that to get into a bar though, sorry. And we're all part of a family. The metazoans, that's the multicellular organisms. There's of course our neighborly near cousins, the rats, 17th millionth cousin. Of course, our dogs are about 27 millionth cousin, as are cats and so forth. And of course, our nearest primate relative is 240,000th cousin, approximately. And anybody that you that you can meet on Earth today within our very young species is no more distantly related to you than approximately 13th, 14th, 15th cousin. Okay, anybody that you meet on Earth, no matter how remote you are. So we're all part of one big extended family. We have tended to forget that in our concrete jungles. We have tended to forget that the cooperators have inherited the Earth, actually. Evolutionary reciprocity, game theory, the prisoner's dilemma. Much scientific work has been done showing how cooperation, in fact, and signaling between species, including what we normally would consider hostile signaling, is actually cooperation. That includes warning coloration, don't touch me, I'm dangerous. Okay, and so forth. And of course, in the warm-blooded animals, although there is anecdotal evidence of biological empathy also in some of the cold-blooded multicellular animals, it remains anecdotal at the moment, but I think it will be established over time. We have what are called mirror neurons. So if I were to injure myself up here right now with a knife by accident, and even by telling you about it, some neurons that are connected with pain light up in my brain here, and the same ones are lighting up in your brain too as you hear about it, or as you visualize the fact that I just slipped and cut myself on my hand. Okay, that is because we have biological empathy, the ability to put ourselves in others' place. Now, there's a small percentage of the human population which is not able to feel that. Okay, they have been somewhat vulgarly called psychopaths or sociopaths. Okay, congenitally. But if a child who is born with that brain deficit, and you can actually see it on a functional MRI, is raised and treated with love, they can learn by imitation, even if they can't feel it the same way that others can. That has even been shown. Of course, if people that are more normally endowed neurophysiologically can also lose empathy if they are treated and brutalized, mistreated and brutalized. So, mirror neurons, biological empathy, a way of communicating with each other, and also communicating across the tree of life. One of the concepts that was introduced about 50 years ago now within evolutionary biology was the concept of inclusive fitness. Darwinian fitness meaning my share of, or our individual share of genes that we pass on to the next generation. Inclusive fitness is the recognition that our fitness extends beyond our immediate persons, or our kin selection immediate fitness, which tapers off very steeply if you imagine it as a multidimensional fitness landscape, and that there is an excess of altruism because of inclusive fitness. And I've applied a term to it recently, which I think is apropos, inclusive sentience, okay? That we share sentience with all the other living things on the planet. And it's our part to discover that sentience and our part in that. That's part of finding the healing within ourselves first, our own personal ecology being healthy. And that we're part of this far vaster tree of life. If the tree of life, this is a small representation of it. If the tree of life were to fill this entire room in multidimensional space, okay, but you're visualizing it in three dimensions here, okay, and natural selection has explored this fitness landscape, and we and our nearest relatives, let's just take for this argument, our nearest relative being, let's say, the fruit fly or the beetle or a spider, okay? We would be twigs about this far apart on the tree that would fill this entire room. Most of the diversity is microbial. And as we know now from direct astronomical evidence, it's a web that stretches beyond our planet out across the visible universe. So, of course, on planet Earth, life's been here. The latest evidence, about 4.4 billion years out of a 4.55 billion year old planet. Life did not emerge here. We came from elsewhere. That's still controversial, but the evidence that I've seen, meteoric, meaning in carbonaceous chondrite meteorites, and in spectral evidence makes it almost beyond any reasonable certainty, beyond any reasonable doubt that is the case. And life itself has had a long odyssey and a long pageant on this planet. Now, time, of course, since we are temporally bound creatures, we are not permanent. And that is actually one of the keys, our own impermanence, to having empathy, to having something that extends beyond ourselves and not becoming imprisoned in the drab Alcatraz of our own souls, limited and compact. And that is that reciprocity stretches out as far as we can visualize. And on time scales, you know, stars, planets, galaxies come and go, just like flowers in spring here, or our own short lives. And you can go that to the very lowest scales, the very largest scales, and us right in the middle. And weirdly enough, our mushy water bucket brains can think about these things. That's pretty weird. Okay? And we're a part of that visualization. Studies of the brain, of course, have debunked perhaps the greatest myth of all, and that is that the myths that we are an ego or have an ego. Some of the greatest thinkers, philosophers, greatest teachers, like the Buddha and others, modern science has been catching up, is that the self cannot be localized anywhere. In our neurophysiology, it is an illusion, it is a construct. We might think of it as a prison that we have to get out of, be able to see beyond ourselves. Thich Nhat Hanh, Zen Buddhist master from Vietnam, and one of the great civil rights leaders in one way, said, "We are here to awaken from the illusion of our separateness." And that's not just talking in mystical terms. You know, I appreciate the part of my religious tradition here, Unitarian Universalists, who are more on the mystical side. I'm more on the empirical side, and these are empirical facts of our separation is an illusion. Our separateness is an illusion. Evolutionist, anthropologist, and poet Loren Eiseley in The Immense Journey had this passage when he was a young man swimming on the Platte River in the rolling plains of central Nebraska. You know, the river that's supposed to be an inch deep and a mile wide, right? He wrote this: "Then I lay back in the floating position that left my face to the sky and shoved off. The sky wheeled over me for an instant as I bobbed into the main channel. I had the sensation of sliding down the vast tilted face of the continent. It was then that I felt the cold tingles of the Alpine Springs to his west in the Rockies at my fingertips, and the warmth of the Gulf pulling me southward. I touched my margins with the delicacy of a crayfish's antenna and felt great fishes gliding about their work. I drifted, I slid over shallows. I was streaming alive through the hot and working ferment of the sun, or oozing secretively through shady thickets. I was water, and the unspeakable alchemies that gestate and take shape in water, the slimy jellies that under the enormous magnification of the sun writhe and whip upward as great barbelled fish mouths, like channel catfish, or sink indistinctly back into the murk out of which they arose. Turtle and fish and pinpoint chirpings of individual frogs are all watery projections, concentrations, as man or as humankind himself is a concentration of that indescribable and liquid brew which is compounded in varying proportions of salt and sun and time. It has appearances, but at its heart lies water. And as I was finally edged gently against a sandbar and dropped like any log, I tottered as I arose to break contact with that mother element, which still, at this late point in time, shelters and brings into being 9/10 of everything alive. That can be described as a mystical experience, as well as talking about real, actual realities. There's no need to keep those two parts of our world apart. Shantideva, the 6th and 7th century, 7th and 8th century poet, philosopher of the Madhyamaka school of Buddhist thought, wrote this in the way of the Bodhisattva, of course, going against the idea of incarnation. Because remember, the Buddhists, originally the Buddhists rebelled against the idea of incarnation. That was the Hindu idea. They talked about rebirth. They said this: it is a misconception to think that I shall experience suffering in a future life, for it is another who will die and another who will be born. Okay? And once we realize that it isn't about our egos, it's about we're part of a greater organism, part of a stream of life that goes beyond us, then we can see that that's actually liberating, breaks us out of that prison of the self. So final meditation this morning would be inclusive sentience, meeting ourselves in the eyes of others, even alien others. Okay? Now, if you have natural feelings about this picture here, okay, if what's left of the evolutionary remnants of the hair on your body stands up a little bit, if you were face to face with this big cat, okay, which can jump about 20 feet in one leap, okay. All right. By the way, this scene up there is in our own San Bernardino Mountains, right behind us here, okay, right over in that direct, right in our area. Okay. As you look into the eyes of others, your fellow human beings and your fellow species, and you realize that you're part and parcel of the same form of life, that the ego is an illusion ultimately, then the irritations, the annoyances, the pettiness of our modern loneliness, we can let that slip. We can recognize that we're not really the enemies of anyone. Doesn't mean we don't have our protection up. The velvet ant still has a very toxic sting and beautiful bright colors saying, leave me alone. Sometimes that's the most loving thing you can do, is to leave someone alone, right? Let them have their space. Okay? And that can be an act of love too, and solidarity with the world around us, and make connections and not be at war with any. But I hope in humankind's future we'll be returning to our natural and healthy place as one of the top predators, like this great cat, also one of the top predators within our natural ecosystem. And with that, I would like to leave you thinking about the stream of life here at our own little church. And I would urge everyone to look deep within ourselves and make peace with ourselves first, and peace with all those around us. Thank you.
Thank you, Lee. That gives us a lot to think about. Our closing hymn now is Go Now in Peace. Those in the sanctuary, and maybe those of you at home too, sit back, close your eyes, and listen quietly and in peace. Our benediction this Sunday is Closing Words for Hard Times by Maureen Killeran. No matter how weak or how frightened we may feel, we each have gifts that can make a difference in the world. In this coming week, may you do at least one thing to support the broken, to welcome the stranger, to celebrate what is worthy, to do the work of justice and love. Be strong, be connected. Each day act so that you may be a little more whole. Namaste, amen, and blessed be. And thank you, Lee, for sharing your valuable time and insights with us this morning. That's a little appreciation. It's sincerely appreciated. We look forward to seeing you again. We're going to have about 10 to 15 minutes of discussion following the service. Be aware that this will be included in the video that is posted. If you wish to participate, please stay seated. If not, you're welcome to join in the parish hall. Thank you for joining us. We hope to see you again soon.
Sure.
You spoke of leaving, sometimes the simple act of leaving someone around alone as being pretty important. One thing I find interesting for myself, as a pagan in America, it's a pretty liberal place. Generally, we're coming from a liberal place of the, don't hit me with a religion that is designed to send me to hell if I do not conform to your specific denomination. In Europe, there's a trick of, there's an interesting bit of interplay going right now. Unfortunately, it can fuel some, maybe the wrong kind of nationalism. What ends up happening is this. There are, because of the larger amounts of Muslims coming in as either immigrating in a controlled way or an uncontrolled way, there are many Europeans who are rather nervous about seeing Muslims coming in and feeling like they're being pressured to change. Many of those people, unfortunately, feel that the Jews are using them as a third-party attack to gain ground. So it unfortunately can fuel anti-Semitism. So you've got Muslims who wish the heck that they were in control of their lives. You have a belief that Jews are pushing the buttons, which is fueling the anti-Semitism. You have the church, the Christian church coming back and saying, we can offer you your old culture back. And then you have a group of European-style pagans who have a tendency to be feeling like they're being pressured by all three of the people of the book and would like very much to feel like they would be left to their own space. And that at this particular point, they're not feeling like they've been gifted over much with the cultural offerings of any of the three people. So you've got this desire to be left alone and not be constantly shocked over and over again. The drawback, we can see a drawback that is there that is going to make a inclusive world that treats everyone properly. We can see the challenges that are that come.
Yeah, the natural world and the reality of the universe and of our biosphere challenge us to lead us to challenge and directly overthrows and disproves the ideologies that in each of those three great world religions in the West have two different moralities, one morality for the in-group and the other morality for the out-group. That is the problem. I have no hesitancy in saying that is the poison pill that is in each of those great traditions.
And as Linda has said before, often it's, are you coming from a place of love or a place of fear?
Yeah, exactly. It's true.
Which is really.
Yeah. Yeah, you have a comment? Sure, go for it.
It's Ariana, and hi. I was invited to the church by one of your board members, the gentleman that.
Okay.
And by the way, such an awesome individual being able to express his his universalist individualism, his existence.
Mhm.
And he kind of gave me a brief idea of the things that are being discussed here. And never in my life have I wanted to come to an individual after just hearing what little bit I've heard and want to address you as rabbi. Okay, teacher of the
I understand.
utmost. You see what I'm saying?
Yep.
And for that, I just thank you for you.
Well, thank you.
It seems like you guys have an approach of, why doctors learn Latin, because it's a language that is can be used to describe things in more detail than regular, Western English, and the things that you're discussing, I've never even heard that even coming close to that approach of existence. No churches, no modern, none of these churches are discussing anything about existence other than an ideal.
Well, this is part of we have to get out of our own little worlds, our own little boxes, our own little comfort zones. We have to extend beyond all of that, because all of that ultimately, it's all of those little hostile worlds that we inhabit that's killing us right now, isn't it? And we need to transcend those if we're going to be truly moral, mature human beings. Yeah.
So is that why that one saying of we're here to find ourselves in the eyes of others? Does that back that up? Of being able to
we should see our solidarity between ourselves and others. Absolutely. Yeah.
I got to work a lot on that.
And we do need to see ourselves in the eyes of others, because then we're less likely to that's a restraint on doing hurtful things to each other, which is
right. And the basic
and being careless and forgetting that we're not just some atomized individual sitting off by ourselves.
Well, I got a big issue how one American can point at another American and say, that's the issue. That person's the problem.
I know.
With the Black Lives Matter and all that. To me, I don't agree with either one. I don't believe all lives matter, because if one soul is going to rape and pillage and plunder 1,000 souls, to me, it makes more logicalness to do away with this particular soul and say, that.
Well, the problem is
who are we to judge if that person's right or wrong?
Yeah, the thing is, how do we treat each other with the reciprocity that is filled with respect, or do we parasitize each other? And this is always what we have to get to the root of in any moral issue or in any quandary that arises, whether it's ills in our society like the ones you just mentioned, the conflicts.
Selection in man's humanity, I guess, of survival of the fittest.
Yeah, survival of the fittest. Okay, see, that's one of the things that phrase, of course, expresses an understanding of evolution that is in fact erroneous in one sense, because the old idea of nature red in tooth and claw and all that sort of thing, we know now that the strongest evidence is that most species are not parasites, actually. Most species are, in fact, live in some sort of cooperative relationship with their ecosystems. And that includes that includes predator and prey. They actually are good for each other. A common example is when the wolves were not present in Yellowstone, the ungulates, deer and elk and all that, their populational health went down. There was an increase in disease and all of that. Sure.
What is
no, here's the microphone right here, if you want to.
And what is your mission statement? What drives you to be here today, and the information that you're relaying to your fellow human? What is the end goal? What do you want whoever's here or whatever you're putting this energy to, what are you trying to get from it?
Well, I'm hoping that as we all talk with each other, that we can help make the world a brighter and more peaceful and less violent place.
But that's our nature. That's man's nature.
Well, the thing is, our nature is a mix. All those who have tried to define human nature in very specific ways, like let's take the Christians who have talked about original sin,
Right.
and said, "Oh, man is corrupt and evil," or
Right. Born into sin and all that.
Yes, exactly. Like Thomas Hobbes,
It's
man.
just a control. It's just a control.
Man is a wolf to man,
Yeah.
as he said. Well, that was a calumny both against men and wolves. Okay, so
I love your intellectualism.
okay. So anyway, the fact is we have the potential for dark and for light within ourselves.
So the
And
potential of doing the light
Right.
is what life is all about. Why
Yes.
we're even here.
Exactly.
Okay.
Thank you so
Like I
much
said,
for your
Rabbi.
comments. Thank you.
So you understand when I say that, right?
Thank you for your questions and comments. I really appreciate it. Thank you. You'll be welcome. You'll be welcome. Take care. Trying to see if somebody. Yes, so the people just have commented about mirror neuron and so forth. And yeah, definitely welcome. And the online folks, thank you for being a part of our service this morning as well. Oh, someone was noting here, Daisy was noting that, yes, the mirror neuron. That's, the fact that we have this biological neurochemical ability to put ourselves in each other's place and to feel what the other feels. That's an amazing thing. All right. Any other final thoughts or questions before we close out the meeting? Oh, thank you so much. Thank you, everybody, so much. And I'm glad that folks online and in the room here have enjoyed our time together. Oh, yes, Daisy mentions that this knowledge influences her work with children on the spectrum. So she's working with children, and that's a very beautiful thing. Thank you, Daisy.
One last.
Sure. Last
Absolutely.
comment. Okay.
There is a tendency among many people, I've done it myself, to basically say, I want this position to where I can point at others and say, wrong, 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 stop pushing me. How does one beat the desire or the, we've seen it in conservative stuff where they feel like they're being told that they cannot preach their doctrine, when their doctrine is basically having to do with jabbing or disapproving of other people. And then they get told that their doctrine, when I say, hey, no, let's keep it polite or let's keep it kind, they feel like they're being told otherwise.
Well, one of the
Let's get here for that since.
Sure, yeah, just a quick thought on that. Whenever we find somebody saying something that really irks our worldview, or if we find very disturbing and threatening and hurtful or things like that, empathy enables us to put ourselves in their place and say, what is it that is frightening them? Because that's the voice of fear in them. What is it, and how can my humanity connect with their humanity, or their humanity connect with my fears about them? And we can reach understanding by actually coming out of ourselves and being able to listen to their pain, even if their pain is painful to us and offends us or angers us, their expression of their pain. I hope that helps. All right, thank you all so much. Have a happy new year.